Well, today we begin the Advent season. It is a 4-week season of time when we begin to consider and reflect on the coming celebration for the birth of Christ, when Christ, who is the fullness of God, came to earth in the form of human flesh. An incredible thing. So we have 4 candles connected with Advent season right up here. One of them is lit today. Next Sunday, we'll have another one lit, and so on. And this Sunday is a Sunday when we reflect on hope. So for that, today is love. You didn't catch that. Deb said it's love, and then Joe said, no, it's hope. He says, and Deb said, oh, it is? And he said, I hope so. So these next 4 messages, or the next 3 anyway, are from younger couples in our congregation who are going to be sharing. And so we are so delighted to have Joe and Naomi Mellon share with us today. So welcome them as they come to share.
Tag team back again.
Yeah. I always feel like I'm too short for this chair. Climb up. There we go. Just can't get down.
So Naomi's a better preacher than I am. She's more beautiful than I am. I don't know really why I'm up here, but
Hush.
I'll just give my 2 cents on stuff that she says, and yeah, hopefully it works out. Yeah. Yep. Preach, girl. Preach. So.
Well, we are speaking about hope today, which I'm excited about. And it's funny when we wrote this together. No, we did. When we wrote this, I was like, this feels a little bit different than how I normally write them. And I was like, God, I feel like I need to bomb this with so much more scripture. And I'm like, there's so much testimony woven through this. I was like, God, is that okay that I'm going to tell a lot of our story today? Because that's kind of, hope is the word that sums that up for me. And he just kind of smiled, and he's like, but I love it because it's my story. He's like, this is a story about me and my friends, like Joseph and Naomi. He's like, it gives me glory and great joy to tell my story. So there's going to be a lot of testimony woven through this today. There is scripture, don't worry. I don't want you to think that I'm neglecting it, but there's a lot of testimony. Yeah, just want to say that. So hope, it's funny, and I'm going to be brutally honest with you. I looked at my sermon this weekend and the title Hope, and for a moment it felt a little ironic because I was sitting on my floor at midnight and I was bawling my eyes out because I felt incredibly discouraged and was struggling with rejection. And I was like, man, to feel like I need to come up and speak about this feels a little bit like a cruel joke right now, because right now I just feel really sad. And I went to bed, and early in the morning, God woke me up, and he just started whispering to my heart. And he's saying, life is filled with emotions. It's filled with these moments. Life is filled with moments that sometimes can rock your boat a little bit. And he's like, sometimes it feels like a little wave that splashes you. Sometimes it feels like a tidal wave. Sometimes moments can feel like a tsunami. He said circumstances, they come and they go like the waves, and it's okay to feel them because they are valid. But those moments, those emotions, they're not your anchor. And he whispered to me, it's okay if your emotions feel loud sometimes. But what's the most important thing at the end of the day is that through it all, it's my voice that you choose to hear. That it's my voice that anchors your heart. It's what you choose to lean into in those moments. And that is where you find peace in those storms. It's recognizing that Jesus is with you in the middle of it all. And like that right there, like that's like the beginning of hope. Knowing, Jesus, you're with me.
Psalm 42:5 says, "Why are you in despair, O my soul? And why have you become disturbed within me? Hope in God, for I shall again praise him for the help of his presence." In this verse, you see that despair and hope are at odds with each other. They're opposites. It's, why are you in despair? Be in hope instead. And I think so many of us kind of have an understanding of hope where it's tied to despair, that we've experienced disappointment, hardship, hurt, where we're looking forward and we don't want to experience disappointment. And so we attach this hope, like, I hope the outcome's different. I hope this circumstance is different. And we need to really have an understanding of hope that's not tied to a circumstance, but it's tied to God. I remember years ago, and I had heard a sermon, and it struck me so deeply. To this day, I still remember it, which is rare. Most of the time, I'm like, yeah, good sermon. And then, I get the bits, but I don't get, the actual details and quotes. But, and I'm not a sports guy at all. So it's especially interesting that this story stuck with me. But this pastor was talking about how huge Red Wings fan. He was like 97 or 98 when they're, getting the Stanley Cup. And it was the final game. And he was driving back from Chicago, and it was a terrible snowstorm. And he's crawling. There's like no radio reception, anything like that. And so he can't even tune in the game. And he's so like, oh, man, I
get it.
Yeah, I can't listen to this, but, man, I hope they win. And so his wife recorded the game for him. And so he got home, and, when he finally got home, knew that the Wings had won, but the next day still watched the game. And the whole time that they're playing, he's watching this game. He already knows the outcome, but he's so filled with hope as he's watching this game. Is this the shot that's going to win the game? Is this the play that's going to do it? Oh, this penalty, does that mean, he knows the outcome. He has an assurance in the Red Wings' ability to win the game. And so his hope watching the game the next day was different than his hope while he was driving in the car. Oh, I hope they win. I hope they win. Now it was, oh, I know they're going to win. I hope this is the moment that does it. So, and then Romans 8:28 says, "So we are convinced that every detail of our lives is continually woven together for good. For we are his lovers who have been called to fulfill his designed purpose." The word good there is the Aramaic word for harmony. And I think it's so cool that, we often look at this verse and just say like, oh, well, he'll work everything for good. Again, this view of circumstances always turning out okay. But that word harmony, it's like God working things together harmoniously. It's like a song, a harmony. It's, the flat notes and the sharp notes are all part of what give the song depth and beauty. And I think it's important to just lean close to God and really understand, like, hey, even this thing that feels off, you're somehow working this harmoniously together so that at the end of this, it'll be a beautiful song that glorifies you.
Which is just so interesting, especially as a musician. When you hit a wrong note, a lot of the time people don't notice, but you sit there and you're like, I ruined it. Like, no one's going to even remember the good notes. They're just going to remember that one time I missed a note. And it can, like, sit with you forever, and you're just like, oh, I can never play again. And just the idea that God could take it and somehow make it beautiful. That there could be this symphony where you're like, I didn't know that that note could be so captivating and beautiful. And I just thought it was so beautiful, even just from a musical standpoint, that it's like, man, he can take those moments where we're like, I messed up and nothing good could come from that. No one's going to remember the good. They're going to look at me and be like, that's the person that did this. Or that's what you think when you look in the mirror. But God's like, but I can make it beautiful. When you trust me with it, when you give it to me, I will make it beautiful again. And I just think that's awesome.
Yeah, it's like when you hold on so tightly to what you want an outcome to be, you know, your hands are tight and you miss out on what God has for you. But if you have a trust in God and you just open up and say, like, all right, I surrender, like, whatever you want to do, like, the things that he's able to place into your hands, you know, it just opens up the possibilities.
We're going to quote our favorite, the OG Jenny Mellon here.
Yeah.
If you didn't hear her sermon, definitely go listen to it. We're going to quote some little nuggets here from her.
Yeah.
Oh, wise one.
So Philippians 3:10, and I continually long to know the wonders of Jesus and to experience the overflowing power of his resurrection working in me. And I love when Jenny said that his resurrection power conquered death and decay. His resurrection power liberated us so that we could experience and enjoy life to the fullest. That power causes us to be at peace, to overflow with joy, and to give and receive love, to be comforted, and to have our hearts and bodies healed. A true understanding of hope really needs to come from a place of deep relationship with God to the point that we are clothed in his glory. Jenny mentioned doxa is the New Testament word for glory, and that it's God's thoughts, opinions, and beliefs. And when God's glory comes, it means we have an increased ability to think and believe and see things as he sees things.
We know that God's heart is postured towards us, that he loves us, he wants us to succeed, he wants to partner with us and see good things happen in our lives. So we know that he wants good things for us. He wants good outcomes. But what does that look like when he, as such a good God, also chooses not to be a puppet master? It means he can't control and be like, I'm going to make sure all these things happen the way I wanted to. He's like, I want good, but at the same time, you can make your own decisions. In life, life just happens. But what that means is, life it's filled with emotions. It's filled with moments. There's wonderful, beautiful things that happen. And there's difficult times that happen. It's this range of emotions. And we can't control life. We can't control what happens. As much as we think that we can or we try to, we can't. But the only thing that we can control is how we respond to life in moments. How are we posturing our hearts when life is happening? I sometimes, quite often, find myself quoting a famous scholar, Michael Scott, and asking life the question of, why are you the way that you are? Sometimes. And if you didn't get that, which I don't think most of you did, it's okay. Michael Scott is actually probably the most quotable TV character on The Office. Adore him. And one of his quotes is, why are you the way that you are? And while I don't necessarily direct that at people, there's times in life where things happen and I'm like, why? And it's like, you can't control it. So all I can do is be like, okay, what am I going to do on my end now? So like when life happens, whether it's smooth or not, the storms are coming, you have to choose, like, where are you going to anchor yourself amongst all of this? Throughout our relationship, countless times I've had people come up to us and be like, wow, your story reminds me of Job. And I was like, wow, that sucks. Thank you. Of all the people, you could have been like, wow, you guys are like, David taking down a giant. I'm like, yeah. Or like, oh, you guys are like Joseph, and he went through all this stuff, but he became king. I'm like, yes. Or I would love for somebody to be like, you were like Esther, like every women's conference has tried to tell me to be. But instead, everybody's like, you guys are like Job. And I'm like, my life sucks.
We have an inside joke. We say this to each other all the time. We'd be like, thanks, I hate it.
So every time someone's like, wow, you guys remind me of Job, we're like, thanks, I hate it. And for a while there, I'm sitting there and I'm like, like, you think of Job and my first reaction's like, his life sucked. And like, you thought it sucked and then it sucked more somehow. And then it somehow sucked a little more. And so I'm sitting here and I'm just like, man. And then God was like, you often get stuck looking at the circumstances of his life. And you're like, that sucks. I'm like, it is so true, God. He's like, I love Job. I love him. Because I looked inside the story and what I saw was that he was so grounded in me. And he was so grounded in the hope of who I was that even though the circumstances sucked, he was unwavering in his hope. And I was like, maybe that's what people meant when they talk to me. And it could also just be that they're like, your life sucks. But Joseph was saying the other day.
I had heard a Bible, the story of Job, and what was really interesting, he kind of just was like, a view that you can kind of take on that story is essentially it wasn't so much God punishing Job or, testing him, but it was more that the enemy was like, hey, let's have a bet. I can knock out anyone. And God's like, go for it. Try your best. And obviously, Job wasn't taken out.
Well, it's awesome because his hope wasn't in the like, oh, I hope my circumstance changes. But it was in who God was, which I think is just such a beautiful reminder. Some of you might be sitting there like, okay, but like, why do people think that you're like Job? So we're going to be sharing. I would love to. Let me tell you some testimonies here. Because, sometimes life is tough. But then God makes it beautiful. Our life is beautiful. But let's tell you the beginning here. Let's tell you the Job parts. So in 2010, we went to get married. For those who don't know, I'm Canadian. That's why I love hockey. And I was coming here to get married. We had our paperwork. We had done all of our homework, talked to the immigration, blah, 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 blah. So we came to get married, and the border was like, yeah, no, you're not getting married. You're not coming into the country. This isn't happening. No good reason. They just, they can make the call. It is what it is. And so it was the week of our wedding, we had to cancel our wedding. And not only did we have to cancel our wedding, they banned me from entering the United States. So it wasn't like, well, let me come back tomorrow and try. They're like, you can't come back. And so I couldn't come to be with him, and I also was separated from him. So I was stuck. They literally, I've forgiven them, guys. I've done so much RTF, it's okay. They just dumped me at the border, and they're like, figure it out. So I was sitting there, and I had to wait till I could be with him. No one was there. And, my family lived 10 hours away, and I just put on my headphones, and I was just bawling my eyes out at the bus station in Windsor. And I put this song on, and I played it on repeat for literally hours until somebody could come get me. And I just listened to, my God is an awesome God. He reigns from heaven above with wisdom, power, and love. Our God is an awesome God. Repeat. I played it on repeat. And the visual I had was like a tornado when it like flattens a house. I was watching my life flatten before me. I had left my job, I left my country, I left my family, I left everything to build this life, and everything was gone. And yet I felt this peace. And I remember sitting there crying, listening to it, and I said, God, I don't know how, but my prayer is that someday you will get glory out of this. So that wasn't the only Job part that happened. After that, you lost your job.
Yeah, because I had to basically leave to go be with Naomi and figure out what we were going to do about our wedding and immigration, all these difficulties. And manager at my work was basically like, well, I don't have anyone to cover your shift, so if you leave, you don't have a job anymore. I'm like, well, I'm going to go take care of my family. So, but then with losing the job and then taking some time to get a new job, fell behind on car payments, and my car got repoed.
He tried to come be with me at the border, and they wouldn't let him in.
Mm-hmm.
They said, oh, you don't have enough money. He said, okay. So
I came back the next day with $1,000 and said, why do you have so much money?
And they wouldn't let him in again. So they continuously kept us separated. And I went back home. My nanny, my grandma, who was like my best friend, I found out like that week was diagnosed with cancer. We lost all the money that we had put into our apartment, our wedding, our stuff. So like we don't even have money to get married again right now. Relationships within my family fell apart. There was a tension between Joseph and my family. And for 2 years, we had broken relationships. And so that was incredibly complex within everything else that was going on. So we were standing there, and we're like, man, you know, sometimes life can suck sometimes. And I feel like when you hear the word hope, sometimes, especially if you're in a difficult place, it can kind of sound like a unicorn, like magical word. Like it reminds me of if you're depressed and someone says, oh, be happy. Or you're like, you have anxiety or panic attacks, they go, oh, just don't be afraid. You're like, thanks, I'm fixed. Sometimes when you're discouraged and someone is like, I felt that. I don't know if you guys have ever experienced that. I'm like, thank you. Sometimes
I hate it.
Yeah, thanks, I hate it. You've never said that to me, so don't worry. Sometimes it can feel so far away and unattainable. And when you're discouraged, someone's like, oh, just have hope. You're like, well, I feel like my emotions just got dismissed. That, you know, what I'm feeling wasn't heard. And it can feel almost impossible. Like, how can I have hope right now? Don't you understand that I'm hurting? Don't you understand that I'm afraid? Don't you understand that I have a history of something going wrong? And I've been waiting for this breakthrough, and you're saying just have hope? I don't even know how. How do I even get there? I had this moment after all the, you know, wedding, crashing, blah, 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 all that stuff. I was sitting in my house, and I literally couldn't function unless I was in God's presence. I was so broken. I didn't have friends or family I could turn to at that moment because of the tensions. I was hurting in ways people just didn't understand. And I can remember as soon as I would get home from work, I would put on worship music, and I didn't turn it off until I left for work. And I said, God, I don't know how to stand on my own feet unless I'm in your presence right now because everything is hurting. And I was just crying. I'm like, I don't know. Everything hurts, God. And there were things going on that were private, that happened, that, you know, I couldn't tell people. At that time, I didn't know how. And so I'm like, I feel alone, and just everything hurts. And I saw this picture of fire. It was fire all around me. As far as the eye could see, was just fire. And then I saw Jesus standing in it beside me, and he goes, I know that everything hurts right now. And that when you look at your life, you look around, you can't even see the end of it. All you can see is fire. You see that it hurts, and you don't know when that's going to leave. But he's like, I am here beside you. And I'm going to hold your hand, and every day we're going to take one more step. And he said, someday you are going to step out of this fire. He's like, you won't even recognize the woman that you are. You won't even recognize your relationship with your fiance because you are going to be refined by the fire with me holding your hand. And that's where transformation happens. That's where true healing happens. Not, okay, I'm just going to try to move on. He's like, no, we're going to walk through this. It's going to hurt, but it's going to heal, and you're going to come out of this strong. And I recognized in that learning, like truly, truly understanding that in those circumstances, he wasn't just like, oh, I'm with you. Like he literally was holding my hand. He's, I am not going to let go. Knowing that he was with me was the beginning of that hope of like, I'm going to get through this because you are with me, and if you are with me, I can do this. And then understanding that he's with me, I'm like, okay, I can trust what you're saying. So I can believe in what you're saying. I can put my trust in that, and I can hope for the things that were just broken in my heart. I can hope for my wedding to happen. I can hope for restoration. And, it's amazing because we came out of that as a couple and as individuals, as people that we wouldn't have recognized before. And we came out stronger, we came out wiser, we came out filled with this intimacy that we could not have possibly known had we not walked through that together with God. And I would not change a thing. We ended up getting married 2 years later. We eloped with our family. God bless them all. We're like, what are you doing for New Year's? And just like everyone packed up in their car and we got married. And it was awesome. We had favor. We got the venue we went to for free. It was this beautiful, beautiful moment. And I will never forget the moment I woke up as his wife that next morning. I started weeping tears of joy. And God said, I kept track and I counted every single tear you have cried. And I am now multiplying it, turning it into joy, and I am giving it back to you. I will never forget that joy. And I sat there and I was like, wow, I have been robbed of nothing. Of nothing. Psalm 38:15 says, for I hope in you, Lord. I hope in you, O Lord, you will answer, O Lord, my God. Hope started in trusting him, in trusting in who he was with us, who he was in us, and then trusting that everything that he said was true. Despite everything that happened, we knew even at that board when it happened, we knew that we were going to get married. We knew that God had spoken that. We didn't know how, we didn't know when, we knew it was going to happen. And in the same way with the States, we had the option of like, well, Joseph, just come to Canada. That's an easy solution. We'll get married and be here. Except God made it very clear to us, no, I'm not asking you to be in Canada. I'm asking you to be in the United States. And so like, okay, we will wait then. We will honor that. We didn't know how I would get to the States. We didn't know when I would get to the States, but we said, God, if you have said that we will be married, then we will be married. If you have said that we will be in the States, then we will be in the States. And we trusted him with it. And God was so wonderfully good that he miraculously opened the door for us to be united, for me to come here. He's so good. We didn't know what was going to happen. We were apart for 4 more years while we were married. It wasn't overnight. We were married, but we were stuck in different countries still. There was still this period of waiting. But I said, God, I will not give up on your word. And you said that we will be in the United States. And we trusted him. And what's beautiful about that trust is when you trust his word, even if you're in a waiting period still, there's a peace that's available. There's a joy that's available. So even though we were apart for 8 years total, we were able to carry this joy that we say, God, I trust you, and I trust that what you have said will come to pass, and we will be ready when it happens. You better believe I packed up my bag and I moved there so quick. I don't even think I said goodbye to anybody. I was just like, boom, goodbye, I'll see you later. And I called everybody after I moved. Sorry, guys. But God made a way. He made a way, even if it wasn't the timeline we thought. You would think, oh, easy, everything's going to happen now. No, sometimes there's waiting still. But God is so good to make things happen, and you can be in a place of peace while that's going on. I love that when God speaks, you can trust his word. Isaiah 55:11 says, so also will be the word that I speak. It does not turn to me unfulfilled. My word performs my purpose and fulfills the mission that I sent it out to. I clung to God's word. I clung to him. Like visually, I would see in these moments me like desperately squeezing like his ankles and holding on. And there were times that was because I was desperate. And I'm like, I don't know how I will stand on my own feet if I'm not holding on to you like this. I don't know what to do. And there were times where I was clinging on to him, and it was with a stubborn faith that I know, because God's told me so many times that he loves about me. I will hold him to his word, to the point that some people have looked at me like, you are crazy for the way you talk to God sometimes. I'm like, I talk to him in the way that he's invited me to. I'm like, you can judge me, but I'm like, we have a history and we are close. And so when he tells me that I can challenge him, I will. And so when he speaks something, I'm like, God, I'm holding you to this. And I feel like for some of you guys, you need to take seriously the words that God has spoken into your life. It's really easy to cling to the disappointments and cling to victimhood. But I want to encourage you, learn how to cling to the words that he has spoken to you. Cling on to him. Be like, Jesus, I will not give up on what you have spoken. I will not give up on you. I will not give up on your word, because your word will never give up on me. In every one of these testimonies, we both have we've just clung to him. And it has just been the most incredible, incredible thing to be like, God, I will not waver. I'm going to put my trust in you fully. I've often had the visual of some of that wrestling being like, I wrestle with God sometimes like Jacob wrestled with the angel. I'm like, I will not let go until I see my mountains crumble beneath my feet. And I will be a fool 1,000 times, but I will challenge every time, be like, no, I'm going to see God's victory happen. And when something happens, instead of being like, I don't know what we're going to do, we've learned to be like, God, what is the testimony that you're going to do here? What is the glory you're going to receive? Because I trust you with every area of my life. And so when these things happen, I'm going to speak to these mountains confidently, because I have a hope in who you are and in what you have said. And so I will not shake under these mountains. I will not be afraid, but I'm going to speak to them with a confidence and say, this is going to happen. I'm going to see these things happen in my life. Is it going to be today? Is it going to be tomorrow? I don't know, but I know that it's going to happen because God keeps his word, and I trust him. Even if it looks like I'm crazy, I'm going to trust what he has spoken. I'm going to trust who he is. And there's been times that's come out of a place where I'm like, I don't even know what else to do but trust this. And he's like, good, then challenge it. I'm like, okay, I don't even know how to have peace right now, God. But you said that we can have peace no matter what. And so you better show up with peace right now, Lord. Come and fill my heart with peace. The world might tell me that's impossible, but I'm saying no. If he says it is, and it is possible. So show up and let's do a testimony here, God. Come and be at peace. Let your presence overflow in our life.
Yeah, we've made such a practice of, a habit, I guess, of practicing hope, that when life goes wrong, when something happens, our immediate response now is just like, sweet, what's the testimony going to be? And we'll go through some of our, testimonies where, we're able to sit in this place of stuff going wrong and immediately going like, all right, God, how are you going to be glorified? Mm-hmm. Like, I'm not going to look at this through disappointment or fear or anxiety. I'm going to say like, sweet, what's the testimony? How am I going to be able to tell people about how good you are because of this?
One thing that we had continuously spoken over us, and I had specifically spoken over me many times, was how we were going to be having children. And that's always been a desire of our hearts. And there were times it was so consistently spoken that I went home and got pregnancy tests. I'm like, Lord, are you trying to tell me something? But it was something that God had confirmed many times, that we would be having children. And yet, when we started having a family, we had back-to-back miscarriages. It is hard to lose someone, whether it is somebody you've had in your life for years, in a lifetime, whether it's a little one that you finally have and you can feel their little spirit. It's never easy losing them. And when you stand there and you're like, okay, God has spoken this over me, And especially when you have the repeat losses, you're like, again? But God, you said this. You said that I would have a child. In those losses, one thing that was so beautiful was experiencing his peace, because I said, Lord, you said that we would have a family, and I am standing on that, and I will weep and I will miss these babies, and I cannot wait to someday be reunited with them. But you have said that we will have a family, and I trust you. I trust you, and I thank you now, Lord, for the children that we will hold in our arms. And it was amazing because we went out for lunch with Harold Eberly, and they did not know, a lot of people didn't know at the time that we were experiencing miscarriages. And we're eating lunch, and he just turned to us, and he said, blessings on your next baby. And his wife turned to correct him, and he said, oh, honey, they don't have a kid. And he turned, it was so precious. I love this moment. He said, I know what I heard. And we said, actually, you're right. We've had children, but we've lost them. So that will be our next one. And when we got pregnant with my daughter, we were like, okay, we had faith. I'm like, God, we're going to hold this child. And I had to go to the emergency room 3 times because we thought that we were losing her. And every time that I went in there, God reminded us of his word, blessings on your next baby. I had such a stubborn hope in the fact that we would hold that child, that when I was in the ER, and I almost was like, is it okay that I'm laughing? I had such a joy. And I'm sitting there, and I'm waiting for them to tell me if she's still there, what's going on. And I'm like, but he said it, so I do not have to be afraid. I surrender this to you, Lord. I will not fear past repeating, but I trust in my future. I trust what you have spoken. And it was amazing. It was amazing the blessings we've experienced with our daughter. Even before her wedding, oh my gosh. Not yet, Lord. Before her baby shower.
Yeah, so we're going to have a baby shower for her, and it's going to be on Saturday. This is like coldest week in February. We wake up Thursday morning, and our furnace is just destroyed. Going, oh, okay, furnaces are expensive.
Baby's about to be here.
Baby's about to be here. We have a shower where we're hosting at the house. And
yeah, we hosted at our house.
yeah, so we ended up, guy came in Thursday, checked it out, said, yeah, I can get this taken care of for you. Put the furnace in on Friday, but had to do some custom duct work to get the old attached to the new. And so he came in Saturday morning, did that, wrapped up about 10 o'clock. Our party was at noon. And then on top of that, my boss was like, hey, I was planning on giving you a little bit of a bonus because of something, and it was going to be right about the cost of your furnace. Do you want me to just pay for the furnace?
Yes.
Sweet.
Yes, we would.
So, just this testimony of just, all right, furnace went out, and immediately I was like, all right, how's God going to be glorified in this?
We're like, we're not going to panic. Yeah. We're like, God, we can't wait to tell this story. Yeah. What are you going to do? Mm-hmm. And here we are telling the story. Yeah. It's so good.
Yeah.
God is so good. We had our beautiful, beautiful daughter. You usually see her running around dancing. We have our healthy son that we had afterwards, mm-hmm. our sweet Liam. And now we have this one coming in June. Mm-hmm. I can stop sucking in now. God is so faithful. He's so faithful to keep his word. And one of the reasons why we're sharing so many testimonies too is that there's so much power in God's history. There's so much power in what he does. And whether it's been the loss of the wedding or the loss of babies, and there's some other little spitfire testimonies we'll tell, God is good. Yeah. He can be trusted. His word can be trusted. So hope is not unattainable. Your story isn't a crappy story because things have gone wrong. Our story wasn't a crappy story. Everyone's like, oh, bummer. I'm like, but it ended so good. Mm-hmm. I've lost nothing. I've gained so much. I've gained so much peace and joy and intimacy with the Father. My family as a whole is blessed. Our life is filled with testimonies of God's blessing because we've learned to be like, you know what, God? We're just going to have our arms open wide and we're going to trust you. Whatever comes, we're not worried about the outcomes because we know that you want what's best for us above and beyond what we could imagine. And so when anything happens or anything goes wrong, I have a hope and an assurance that you are good and that you're going to make it good and you're going to make it creatively good, which means it's better than what I can imagine. So God, I want to hold on to hope because I love you and you love me and I know that is true and you are so good. My testimony isn't a victim story. I am not a victim. I'm not. I have never identified that because I'm not. I'm like, it didn't end with him on the cross. He is resurrected. This is a victorious king story that's woven through mine. I'm like, if I don't have that victorious part yet, it just means that I don't have the testimony yet to share. It's coming still. So I'm not a victim. We're not a victim. God is so good. Hope is a powerful, powerful thing. You don't have to stay in a place of disappointment. It doesn't matter the outcome of the situation because God will make it good. So when it doesn't go right, learn how to surrender and be like, okay, you have a way of making this good that I need to learn how to trust for. God is he is so good and he will allow you to experience a lifetime of testimonies. If you sit and talk with us, we can share with you many. If you walk through our house is filled with testimonies of things that have been gifted, been given. And it's just amazing what God can do when you give him the space to be who he is. And when you trust him. We've had times to like spitfire testimonies. I'm not going to like tell them long or anything. But God is so good. There was a time we were evicted from our loft. I was pregnant at the time, and we were like unlawfully evicted. And I went to go be like, actually, like I could argue what happened because it was a twisted story. And God said, close your mouth. I was like, okay. He's like, take it, like receive it, be evicted. And it's funny because that morning he had asked me, would you have peace no matter what happens? Would you trust me? And I was like, yeah. I'm like, I should have been a little afraid when he asked that. I was like, yes. And like probably about 15 minutes later, I got called down to the landlord's office. And they're like, you're being evicted. You have 2 weeks to get out. That we've been accused of this. And I totally could have fought it. And God was like, no. I was like, okay. So I came upstairs and I'm like, cool, we're pregnant. Where am I going to find a place in 2 weeks? We don't have the money to put together all this stuff for, first and last month's rent, etc. It was amazing. By the end of the day, we had a free house that was given to us to move into. Rent-free, a free house. That had a yard for our dogs. We went from living in a place that was a little bit tricky, being pregnant with our pets. We got upgraded. God was like, do you trust me? Can you have hope that no matter what's going on right now, that I will take care of you? Not only did he take care of us, he upgraded us. And he gave us a house for free so we could save up money. And then we bought our dream house. God is so, so good. We had fun cars when I moved here.
I've had a really good record with quality of vehicles throughout my life. When Naomi first moved here, I had this old pickup truck that I bartered for. A guy needed help finishing up a job, and he was like, hey, if you go tile this shower, I'll give you my truck. And I was like, sweet. So when did that, it was very rundown. My buddy always said, like, oh, yeah, her tongue's hanging out. She's tired. And the passenger door did not shut, so we had to bungee cord it shut. The heat didn't work.
It was very cold driving to church.
Yeah. And so, I mean, we went from that to someone gave us a car. And what's so cool is what we're talking about with hope. It's not just for you. It's practicing this muscle and making it so a part of your life that it becomes for other people as well. Mm-hmm. We have this testimony of like, yeah, we were given a car and, that was huge. And then
we didn't have a car.
Yeah, because we didn't have a car. And then, just recently there was someone that was in need, and I just remembered being like, God, if you could just give them a car. Like, you've done it for us, do it for them. The very next day, someone calls us up like, hey, do you guys want our car?
Yes.
Yes. So because we have practiced this bustle of hope, because we value these testimonies, because we're constantly walking in gratitude, it opens us up to be hope to other people. It opens us up to be the testimony for other people.
It was awesome because when this person called and said, would you like my car? I was like, yes, I would love to take my children somewhere. Immediately, the family came to our mind. And we were like, okay, we want to surprise them with this vehicle. And so we fixed it up, whatever. And we gifted it to them, not knowing they were praying for that exact vehicle. God is so good. God is so good. When you hear those little whispers of him, listen. You have no idea what he has in store. It's so powerful. Yeah, we're roughing it up. You guys are so kind to be sitting here still. We're going to end with the beginning, which is Isaiah 9, 6, and 7.
Yeah, because like Randy said, this is Advent, right? And so we're really talking about, Jesus coming to the earth. And so Isaiah 9, 6 through 7, for to us a child is born, to us a Savior, a Son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the greatness of his government and peace there will be no end. He will reign on David's throne and over his kingdom, establishing and upholding it with justice and righteousness. From that time on and forever, the zeal of the Lord Almighty will accomplish this. The hope that we're talking about today is the hope in this, the hope in Jesus, that he has come, and that he is our Savior, that he is a wonderful counselor, a mighty God, an everlasting Father, Prince of Peace, that his government is far more superior to any other government. And when we anchor our hearts to him, it doesn't matter the circumstances of our life, because we can have hope and joy and peace and see him glorified.
Amen.
That was so good. So encouraging.